Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Wynna Wong. Here's a look at tonight's top stories. Hong Kong stocks shoot out of a 13-year low, with the Hang Seng Index surging over 5%. Hong Kong may have its first November number 8 typhoon signal in 50 years. And the judge in the sedition case against Stan New says he will accept all articles submitted by the prosecution. The Hang Seng Index jumped 5.2% today, closing above 15,000 points to recover from a 13-year low. Speculation that the mainland may ease COVID curbs spurred the rebound. Sachin Katvi reports.
Hong Kong and mainland stocks rallied after an unverified social media post hinted that Beijing would gradually move away from its stringent zero COVID policy. Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian later denied any knowledge of the report, sending the Hang Seng Index down by 300 points. But by then, the benchmark had recovered from a 13-year low after losing more than 14% of its market value last month. The index closed 5.2% higher at 15,455 points. The rush was led by tech stocks, with the Hang Seng Tech Index gaining almost 8%. The main drivers of the charge were Alibaba, which jumped 7.6%, and Tencent, which gained 10.6%. Food delivery heavyweight Meituan advanced by 11.9%. Sands China with a gain of 11.5% and Galaxy Entertainment with 8.8% turned the roulette wheels for casino stocks, as Macau will start welcoming tour groups from the mainland soon. Mainland funds pumped in $7.4 billion to buy locally listed stocks, the most since June, as liquidity flowed south. Today's rally came ahead of an expected increase in U.S. interest rates tomorrow. Sachin Katvi, HKIBC.
Hong Kong could experience the first number 8 signal in November in half a century. With severe tropical storm Nalgae winging closer to the city, a giant tree was uprooted and a boat sank. Raymond Young reports.
While severe tropical storm Nalgae is forecast to come closest to Hong Kong tomorrow morning, its impact has already been felt across the city. Divers from the Fire Services Department were called to Yau Ma Tei Typhoon Shelter at the break of dawn after a houseboat capsized in rough seas. No one was trapped inside the boat, docked about 400 meters from the shore. Hours later in Mong Kok, a giant Chinese banyan tree on Lun Yan Street collapsed after it was uprooted. No one was nearby at the time. The 15-meter tall tree was among 500 listed on the government's register of old and valuable trees. It passed an inspection just a year ago. The observatory said Nalgae, which means wings in Korean, will come closer to Hong Kong than initially forecast.
The observatory will consider issuing the number 8 gale or storm signal during the day tomorrow. However, the exact timing would depend on the actual variation in local winds.
Typhoons are rare this late in the year. The last time a number 8 signal had to be raised in November was in 1972, exactly 50 years ago. Raymond Yang, HKIBC.
Financial Secretary Paul Chan is back in Hong Kong after being stranded in Saudi Arabia because of COVID. Speaking at the airport, Chan said he'll await the result of the PCR test taken when he landed to see if he can personally attend the Global Investment Summit tomorrow. He also asked everyone not to focus on the few absentees after 2 more top executives dropped out today. The Monetary Authority said the summit will go ahead at the Four Seasons Hotel, regardless of the inclement weather. Most of the guests will be staying at the same venue, it added. A district court judge says he will accept all articles that the prosecution wishes to submit in a sedition case against an online news outlet. But he emphasized that the prosecutor has to prove seditious intent on the part of the 3 defendants. Janice Low reports.
Former Stand News chief editor Chung Pui-kun and his successor Patrick Lam were driven to the district court in a prison van for the second day of their sedition case. Best Pencil Hong Kong Limited, the parent company of the now-defunct online tabloid, was also charged with conspiracy to publish seditious materials, but again did not send any representative. Judge Kwok Wai Keen ruled that all 17 articles submitted by the prosecution would be considered as evidence, even though 10 exceeded the time limit to press a charge. Some of the articles were written by political activists and published along with videos. The prosecution said Stand News is not simply an online news outlet, but also a political platform. Some of its publications, according to the prosecutor, would be shared with social media platforms. The prosecution revealed that Stand News had an annual net income of $6 million from 2015 to 2018, but it jumped more than tenfold to over $80 million in 2019 during the anti-government protests. The proceeds were either subscription fees or donations. Chung had said he would step down as chief editor after last October. But the prosecutor alleged that Chung was still carrying out his duties after the announcement by providing reporting advice in messaging groups. The case continues tomorrow with further testimony from the police officer responsible for capturing evidence online. Janice Low, HKIBC.
The number of foreigners arriving in the city has risen since quarantine measures were eased in September. This has helped boost the economy amid hopes that more major events can be staged to pull Hong Kong out of recession. Maisie Mock reports.
With FinTech Week kicking off and more large-scale events set to begin, Chief Executive John Lee said the city will be filled with vitality in the next 2 weeks. Speaking before his cabinet meeting this morning, he said the number of foreigners arriving in Hong Kong more than doubled in October from September. Immigration Department statistics showed 14,408 foreigners arrived in September, jumping to 32,060 in the following month. But it was still a far cry from pre-COVID levels, when more than 1 million people flocked to the city each month, according to Tourism Board data. On the economic front, Lee blamed weak global demand for hurting the city's exports. With Hong Kong remaining in recession, Lee hopes more events will give the economy a shot in the arm. The chief executive fended off criticism over the government's decision to amend the law, after the High Court ruled that the health secretary was not empowered to nullify certificates exempting the holders from COVID jabs.
If the judgment indicates that despite the good intention of the government, there is a need to ensure that the legal basis is strong and full, and according to that principle, we take action to ensure that we have a strong legal basis so that we can make sure that we act in accordance with the law. That's the principle of rule of law. Exactly, that's a very strong example that we are upholding the principle of the rule of law.
Around 19,000 exemption certificates will be invalidated next Wednesday. Maisie Mock, HKIBC.
COVID cases in Hong Kong have dropped for the 5th consecutive day. Officials recorded 4,418 infections, including 437 imported cases. Virus-related deaths climbed to 13, marking the 3rd day that fatalities numbered more than 10. The number of COVID patients in hospitals dropped to 1,959. 12 of them are in intensive care. Overseas now, South Korea has continued paying tribute to the 156 people killed in the Halloween crush in the capital Seoul last Saturday. President Yoon Suk-yeol, who declared a week of national mourning, placed a flower at a makeshift memorial near the site of the disaster in the Itaewon Entertainment District. He called for a thorough investigation. The authorities have been going through camera footage to try to determine what sparked the crowd surge. Koreans shocked by the tragedy have been laying flowers and bowing before the memorial. Most of the victims were young adults and teenagers and included 26 foreigners. 9 people have been arrested following a bridge disaster, which killed at least 135 people in western India on Sunday. As search operations continued, there have been calls for the Chief Minister of Gujarat State to resign. Azam Khan reports.
Members of India's opposition, the Congress Party, gathered in the capital New Delhi to light candles in tribute to those killed in one of the country's worst bridge disasters. They demanded accountability and called on the Chief Minister of Gujarat State, Bhupendra Patel, to step down. He should go immediately, said this Congress Party member. The 140-year-old colonial-era suspension bridge in the city of Morbi had opened 4 days earlier than scheduled after repairs. It was a major tourist attraction, and several hundred people were on the bridge when it collapsed. 9 people, including staff of a maintenance company, have been arrested as part of an investigation amid outrage over whether safety was up to scratch. The authorities have continued combing through the Machu River for potential survivors, as many people are still missing. The tragedy has already impacted thousands, with candles outside the hospital near the disaster site burning through the night. Azam Khan, HKIBC.
Israelis are going to the polls for the 5th time in 4 years to elect a new government. Former Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is eyeing a return to power despite an ongoing corruption trial. His Likud party and its right-wing partners are aiming for 61 of the 120 seats in parliament. Netanyahu faces a strong challenge from caretaker Prime Minister Yair Lapid. The turnout is expected to be low because of voting fatigue over the previous 4 elections, returned governments that didn't last long. The 7th edition of Hong Kong's FinTech Week has drawn visitors from around the world. Some were frustrated with the Amber Code rule, which restricted their business networking, but others were glad that the city is back in business. Chloe Feng met with some of them.
Some have likened the annual FinTech Week to a Super Bowl for finance geeks. The event, which drew over 20,000 participants from over 500 firms in 80 economies, also marked Hong Kong's comeback after nearly 3 years of stringent COVID curbs. But reactions from overseas visitors were mixed.
Hong Kong specifically is a very, very interesting market. I would agree and confirm that entry requirements are somewhat strict. Like I couldn't go to the restaurant for the first 3 days, which was a bit challenging.
I think it really hinders everything. I mean, I think coming here from South Africa, we haven't been able to wear masks for over a year now. It's really not ideal for networking.
But not all participants were bothered by the rules.
And so happy to be here. It's larger than expected. More people and more fresh ideas than I expected as well after 3 years of restriction. And you caught me actually just wandering around, just trying to find some more insight from the exhibitors here, the innovations that are coming through in the fintech space.
Here at the Hong Kong FinTech Week, many companies have set up booths to showcase their latest inventions. For example, I am now at the booth offered by Meta, which allows participants to experience virtual business meetings in the digital world called the Metaverse.
The company hopes by offering new channels, business groups can explore futuristic and unconventional setups with their employees and clients. Tomorrow, Hong Kong kicks off the Global Financial Leaders Investment Summit with 200 members of the financial elite in attendance. Chloe Feng, HKIBC.
A look at the markets now. The Hang Seng Index closed up 768 points. Top 10 active stocks, Tencent was up $21.80, Meituan up $14.80. Tracker Fund up 73 cents, BYD Company up $7.90. In exchange rates, the euro is at 7.80, British pound 9.06. And in foreign markets, the UK FTSE is up 102 points. China has successfully docked the 3rd and final module of its space station. State media showed the moment the Mengtian lab united with the Tiangong Space Station complex. The module took off from Hainan 13 hours earlier. The construction of Tiangong is now set for completion as China's space development takes a major step. Finally, the weather. The strong wind signal number 3 is currently in force. Tomorrow will be cloudy with occasional squally showers and rough seas. Temperatures will range between 18 and 22 degrees. More rain on Thursday before the sun returns on Friday. Now let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that's our main news for Tuesday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Wynna Wong. Good night and thanks for watching.